In the ending of my last cinematic video, we officially arrived at Ruby's Inn in Bryce Canyon, Utah. After leaving Williams, Arizona and spending months traveling throughout the Southwest, this was the next chapter of my journey. A new place, a new adventure, and honestly, a place I knew very little about when I first arrived. At first, Ruby's Inn was simply going to be a temporary stop, a place where I could work for a season, save some money, and continue living this dream on the road. But after nearly 3 months here, I realized this place was much more than just a campground or a job. Ruby's Inn is a significant piece of Utah history. For over a century, this small lodge has welcomed travelers from around the world as they come to experience the incredible landscape of Bryce Canyon. Behind the buildings, gift shops, and busy tourist season is a story that simply started with two people, Ruby and Minnie Syrett. And now, after becoming a small part of this place myself, I want to share the story of how Ruby's Inn came to be, how it shaped the area, and what my own unexpected chapter here has looked like.
At the turn of the 20th century, this part of southern Utah looked nothing like it does today. There was no national park entrance, no paved roads leading thousands of visitors to the rim, and there was certainly no hotels, restaurants, or gift shops lining a highway. Just miles of open land, rugged terrain, and a small community of settlers trying to build a life in one of the most remote corners of the American West. Among those settlers was a man named Ruby Syrett, otherwise known as Ruby. Ruby wasn't trying to create a tourist destination. He wasn't trying to build a landmark that would last for generations. He was simply looking for a place to call home. Alongside his wife, Minnie, Ruby established a homestead in this area, raising a family and working the land. But as more people began hearing stories about the incredible landscape nearby, something unexpected began to happen. Travelers started showing up.
But there was one problem. Ruby and Minnie had no idea what lay just a few miles from their new home. For the first few weeks, they simply focused on building their new life. Then one day, a neighboring rancher named Clyde Sudwicks stopped by for a visit. He asked Ruby, "Have you seen Bryce?" And Ruby replied, "No. What is it?" Clyde simply smiled and said, "Oh, it's just a hole in the ground. But you should see it." The following Sunday, Ruby and his family made the trip to the canyon rim, and what they found was unlike anything they had ever seen. Ruby would later state, "What a surprise the hole turned out to be. We thought everyone should see it." From that day forward, Ruby and Minnie began inviting friends and family to experience Bryce Canyon for themselves. And as word of Bryce Canyon spread, so did the number of people making the journey to see it for themselves. What simply began as weekend trips with friends and family quickly became something much bigger. And Ruby realized Bryce Canyon didn't just need visitors, it needed a place to welcome them. And in 1919, Ruby received permission from the state of Utah to officially build a lodge along the rim. Known as Tourist Rest, this small lodge provided visitors with a place to eat, rest, and stay after making the journey to Bryce Canyon. It may have started as a simple structure on the edge of the canyon, but the idea behind it was much bigger. Ruby was now quite literally starting to build the legacy we know today. But Ruby's journey was not going to be a straight path to success. As Bryce Canyon gained recognition, efforts began to protect this incredible landscape for future generations. And in 1923, Bryce Canyon became a national monument. with just a few years later becoming official national park. But this new designation came with an unexpected consequence. The tourist rest, the very lodge Ruby and Minnie had built to welcome visitors to Bryce Canyon, was located within the boundaries of the new monument, and they were forced to give it up. For many people, losing the business they had spent years building would have been the end of the story. But for Ruby and Minnie, it was only another beginning. Instead of simply walking away, Ruby and Minnie refused to give up, immediately returning to their ranch and beginning to rebuild. Outside the boundaries of the newly established monument, they created another lodge where visitors could once again experience the beauty of Bryce Canyon. This new location would become known as Ruby's Inn, and it became the foundation of an entire community. For decades, Ruby's Inn continued to grow as more and more visitors traveled to Bryce Canyon, ultimately making it a symbol of hospitality in southern Utah. But the legacy Ruby and Minnie built would eventually face another defining moment. In 1984, a devastating fire destroyed the main lodge and several motel units, leaving the future of Ruby's Inn uncertain. But by this point, resilience had already become part of the family's story. The same determination that led Ruby and Minnie to rebuild decades earlier was now carried on by the next generations. So instead of simply giving up, they rebuilt once again. And just like before, Ruby's Inn came back stronger than ever. Today, more than a century after Ruby and Minnie first welcomed visitors to Bryce Canyon, their legacy lives on. What began as a small lodge built to help travelers experience the canyon has grown into something much bigger. Generation after generation has carried forward the same values that defined Ruby and Minnie from the very beginning: hospitality, perseverance, and a willingness to rebuild when challenges arise. The community that surrounds Bryce Canyon today was shaped by that very vision. What was once a remote corner of southern Utah has now become a destination visited by people from around the globe. And at the center of it all is the place where the story truly began: Ruby's Inn. And 3 months ago, I arrived here at Ruby's Inn, not knowing exactly what this next chapter would look like. I came here for a seasonal job, but over the past few months, I've had the opportunity to experience a place with more than a century of history behind it. I've worked in the rock shop, moved over to the general store, met visitors from around the globe, and gotten to experience a small piece of what makes this area so special. And fittingly, while creating this very video, I was reminded that every story has its own challenges. Halfway through production, my recording setup unexpectedly failed, and the audio quality you hear changed because I had to find another way to finish it. So I apologize for the difference in sound, but I wanted to make sure this story was still told, because this is only the beginning of my videos here. Over the next several months, I'll be sharing more of my adventures around Ruby's Inn and Bryce Canyon, from exploring the canyon itself, to experiencing ATV rides and other activities, sharing what life is like as a work camper, and visiting some of the incredible places nearby, like Capitol Reef National Park. There are still countless stories left to tell, and I can't wait to share them with you. So make sure you like, subscribe, and I hope to see y'all on the next adventure.